Hello everyone! I thought it would be very interesting if I started a playlist with case studies, where I present a case where a child is showing a specific problem with their behavior or their sleep, and I make some suggestions as to what might be going on for this child and what might help. If what I describe reminds you of a child, please remember all these cases are made up, but the problems I'm describing are really common and are very real. If you'd like to suggest a case for me to address, real or not, it doesn't matter, please leave it in the comments and I'll do my best to make a video about it in the future. This case I'm about to present is about biting. Bites from children, especially if they get you well, can be very painful and they can break skin, which can lead to infection. So they're quite serious and is a serious problem that needs addressing. So let's have a look at the first case study. We have a 2-year-old boy. We're gonna call him K. This is not an initial. It has nothing to do with someone's real name because this case is made up, so it's not a real boy. So he's going to nursery Monday to Friday. He's showing speech delay. He doesn't know how to interact with his peers. Sensory hypersensitivity, which means that he's more sensitive to stimulus. Things like food, noise, touch. So we may see that he covers his ears. He refuses a lot of food. And that he may not like certain types of touch or certain textures like clothing, that sort of thing. Because of the difficulties above, he's on a waiting list for an autism assessment. This behavior, this biting behavior, is a new behavior. He's never shown it before. He's biting his peers, so that's directed at his peers, not adults, at the nursery. So they only see it at nursery, they don't see it at home. The children react by crying. Staff run to separate them when they hear the cries and they say no in a firm voice. And they're not shouting, they're not giving the child any more attention than just saying no. There's no obvious trigger for this behavior. They have offered some teething toys at the nursery because his teeth are growing, so maybe he's having some pain related to that, but he's refusing them, he's not using them. So they don't really know why he's doing it. After going through this case, what do you think is going on for Kay? Why do you think he's biting his peers? Do you have any suggestions of what might help? Let's have a look at my hypothesis and my suggestions now. This behavior might be having different functions. So let's have a look at one by one. This behavior might be serving a social function. The child doesn't know how to play with others, but has realized that biting elicits a response from the other children. Even if it's crying, even if it's negative. The child doesn't necessarily realize that this response is negative. He just knows that he's getting a response from them, and perhaps that's what he's resorting to as a way to try to make friends. It could be a cause and effect reinforcer, where this child bites the children, and they cry, and they scream, and they give this big reaction that is very reinforcing to the child. The child doesn't mean to hurt them, and he's probably not aware that he's hurting the other children. To meet this need, this function that the behavior is serving at the moment, we can show him how to play with cause and effect toys, or we can support him to engage in a game with other children. Something simple like passing a ball. It could also be sensory-seeking behavior. Oral sensory-seeking behaviors are very common at this age, and even more prevalent in autistic children. We can meet this need by providing appropriate and safe oral stimulation. Let's move on to the next slide to see. So for example, offering crunchy foods, food with strong flavors, even if it's spicy. We can use a vibrating brush or chewy toys that are tied around the neck. I have left some images here. Whenever we use necklace or anything that is tied around the neck of a young child, we need to make sure that it has a safety tie, as I have shown on the left. So the minute there is a bit of tension, it comes undone. So the child cannot strangle themselves. This is very important. We can experiment with different textures and shapes shapes and hardness or softness of the chewy toy, because perhaps the teething toys that the nursery has been using are not the right texture for him. We can provide sensory input to other parts of the body. It doesn't need to be just the mouth. Things like therapeutic brushing, swinging, messy play, water play, deep pressure, massage. There are lots and lots. You can look on Google, on YouTube, there are lots of ideas. We know that this child is hypersensitive to some sensory stimuli. So it might be that he rejects a lot of what we offer. But we just need to keep offering, being creative, different textures, for example, wet texture, dry texture. It could be water, slime. It could be dry, like rice or beans. We just need to be creative and find what works for this child. Another function can also be attention seeking from adults. Remember that the adults are reacting to this behavior by rushing to him, perhaps even running, and say no. I know that's really difficult because they really need to stop that behavior as soon as possible. This behavior is very painful for the poor child, but it can also lead to infection. To meet this need for attention from adults, we need to shower him with attention when he's showing appropriate behaviors. For example, when he's playing nicely or he's using the sensory strategies that we offer him. And we need to stop reinforcing the behavior by focusing our attention on the injured child and not talking or making eye contact with K. So it might be that we can't help running and rushing towards him because we have to stop the behavior like right now, but we can not interact with K at all and just focus on the injured child. Another suggestion is to reduce the opportunities to bite. So by engaging him in appropriate sensory or social activities regularly, as suggested before, making sure that you provide plenty of praise throughout the day and other reinforcers if they are necessary. And that's really important. We shouldn't provide more reinforcement than necessary. So if the child is already responding well to praise, we shouldn't be offering things like sweeties or a special toy or anything else. We need to provide just enough reinforcement, and the more natural this reinforcement is, like praise, the better. Because any reinforcement that is not natural, we will need to gradually remove it. And this process can be quite hard. So the less reinforcement we need to achieve success, the better. And we need to remember that there might be more than one function to this behavior. It might be sensory and social, it might be social and attention seeking from adults. So we may need to use different strategies to deal with different functions of this behavior. And remember that the more this child engages in alternative behaviors, like appropriate play or sensory strategies, the stronger these neural pathways will become. And the weaker the neural pathway of biting will also become. So it's very important that we keep consistent and that we keep trying and that we keep being creative and offering all these opportunities for K. So I hope you find this interesting and maybe even helpful if you have a child who has this behavior, and that I gave you a lot of ideas to try. So thank you so much for watching. Goodbye. If you like this video and think that others can benefit from this content, please like, share or subscribe. It all helps me reach more people. And I'm sure it can make a big difference to many families. Thank you.